Colleagues, I think we have to start. We are already 10 minutes late. If we want to finish in time. So can you please take your seats? Yes. You have a presentation? Yeah.
It works. So all I'm going to do is switch it on.
Okay, colleagues. So we should continue our session. And before lunch, we still have two presentations, and somebody's phone is ringing. So please answer and maybe switch off the sounds. We'll start with Alexander introducing the theme of the UNEA. Two comments from the last session. Two comments. Okay, 2 comments from the last session, and then we continue with the. So Sasha can. Please switch off the phone, which is ringing. It's in a bag or somewhere. Beeping bag.
Someone's bag.
Okay. Who had? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Four comments before we start. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm happy I appeared in the very right moment. So I want to mention on behalf of the Regional Environmental Center that over the last 25 years we were quite fortunate to be able to secure ongoing support for civil society in many of our subject regions with the kind support of multiple donors. I don't want to list them with a risk to miss out someone. And we have grown to also understand that the support of civil society should be ongoing and should be rather focused on creating enabling conditions and supporting civil society in their own growth, in their strategic thinking, and in their positioning within the civil society and the other stakeholders in their country, so that they can be most efficient. And then by using different means, we were aiming to support civil society to implement concrete actions with, in the format of giving them small grants. And this, fortunately, was going on for quite a long time in Eastern Europe, in the Eastern neighborhood countries of European Union, and, of course, Southeast Europe. Yeah, indeed, we were not able in all cases for other countries to secure funding for stable and sustainable civil society support, but I claim that for the countries that we have managed to secure support, we indeed have enjoyed wonderful results. And I'm happy to have some of our beneficiary civil society sitting around this table. And I'll be very happy to hear from anyone other constructive suggestions on how we can better help civil society, better target our assistance so that they can use their potential to the maximum. And I think we should not really linger on the fact that the financial support is decreasing, but we should go in a direction of being creative and in looking into civil society development in innovative ways by using different opportunities to help out. It's not really always an issue of financial support. Sometimes it's about giving them incentives to become self-sufficient, to go in the field of specializing and offering this expertise to institutions for money, sometimes creating projects which would ultimately be decreasing energy consumption, and it will be financial gain also for community, for civil society, and so forth. Being creative in using the current state of innovation and take advantage of it. So it's not really all about funding. Sometimes it's about better cooperation, better networking. And I also believe that nowadays we should focus on giving further opportunities of civil society across regions to meet and to collaborate. Therefore, also many of our projects would have sub-regional character where we'll engage stakeholders from neighboring countries to intensively cooperate and to work together. We were also giving cooperative grants to allow that. So I would really ask everyone to focus into the opportunities so that we come out of this meeting with concrete suggestions that can be communicated to UNEA. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, we had Tamara.
I just want to say a small comment after Sveta. We're one of this young organization in Ukraine, and I want to tell that year by year in our countries grow up new organizations and they become get more influence in society. They have a lot of followers in Facebook, for example, in Instagram and social medias. But sometimes they haven't this expertise, yes, and sometimes they, if you want to share sustainable development goals with more big amount of people in the world, in our countries, I think it's good to cooperate with this young organization also, and maybe give them not maybe financial support, but expert support, and they will have influence not only in society, but also bigger cooperation with government. So year by year, we will get more cooperation between all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. You had, yeah, go on.
Actually, I wanted to return to the free beer analogy because it's one of my favorite at the moment. So actually, though, you know, if somebody's offering you free beer, I don't know if you may have some more than one opportunity for free beer, you might pass by, maybe if someone is offering you some beer which is made from the leftovers of the beer process. In America, we used to always, these brands of beer that were very inexpensive, they would usually have the word old in front and then some variation of Bavarian or Old Bavarian or something like that, versus maybe a nice IPA if you're going by. So the question is, what kind of free beer is on offer, you know, in the case of UNEA? And I wanted to just remind us about the fact that UNEA is really young. First of all, it's a young process, and it is a significant departure from what UNEP in the past offered as a process for engagement of civil society. So the fact that it's a universal membership organization now, rather than having a small governing council, really makes a difference in the effectiveness of the decisions that come out of UNEA. Alex has mentioned earlier this process where there was a decision in the Rio+20 conference about strengthening the stakeholder engagement of UNEP, making it close to the state of the art. And I was a part of this expert group on stakeholder engagement that was established at UNEP. I was the rapporteur for that group. And we looked at the state of the art, and one of the areas of the state of the art was in the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Commission on Food Safety. And we examined that, and we proposed, you know, that some of these things be adopted. And what really works in that context is this idea of the self-organizing principle. So the various organizations which are involved in the work of the Commission on Food Safety, they are allowed to self-organize. And sometimes I think that the major groups and stakeholders approach doesn't fully support the idea of the self-organizing principle. But I don't think that, you know, it's an evolving process. UNEP is not yet there, but it doesn't take away from the fact that there's a very real opportunity that UNIA offers, even if it's not yet at the state of the art in terms of stakeholder engagement, even in the areas of trying to set the agenda for international decision-making in the areas of environment and sustainable development. So, but recognizing self-organization as a key element, I think it's very important that we keep in mind that there are some organizations that are not going to be going to UNIA. There are some organizations that are going to be working together, supporting those that are going to UNIA. But self-organization is still a key element. But anyone who's interested in being in UNIA, I think it's a young and developing process. So it's still in the beginning. This is only the third UNIA. So it's good to be in at the beginning if you really want to be a part of it as it grows and goes further along. Thanks.
Oh, there's more hands coming up. We will never finish this session. It's a good topic. So, Sasha, you already had your hand before the coffee break, and then we have 3 more hands, and I think then we have to stop. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to recall in what times we live, and that we're going very fast backward, and I want to remember that we have seen the Trump administration cut funds for the EPA, the Environmental Agency, and putting an industry oil person at its head who had been fought by that same agency for corruption and for not sticking to environmental law. We have seen that the US has also cut the budget for the United Nations, the core budget, the budget for women's rights and reproductive health, and that they're giving tax breaks to the military industry, the oil industry, the gas industry, the pesticide industry, the plastic industry. So it's very clear. If we put the money in unsustainable, harmful activities, and we take it away from environmental protection and from civil society, it's a very clear strategy. And we see it also in Europe, unfortunately. We have a new government in the Netherlands, and our Minister of Finance comes from Shell. I don't know what the situation is in Hungary, but I know that in Poland you have seen similar things. So we have to be aware, and we should not be naive. We are being eliminated with a strategy. We have received, as Women Engaged for a Common Future, letters from the pesticide industry and from the plastics industry, members of associations accusing us, saying you shouldn't be spreading information about how dangerous endocrine disrupting chemicals are, or pesticides are. And they even went as far as writing letters to the Ministry of the Netherlands and say, why are you funding an NGO like this? And we know that letters like this, hundreds of letters like this, are arriving every day to donors, yeah, specifically state donors. The European Commission gets letters like this regularly. There is a lot of pressure on budgets going to civil society and NGOs. And so what we see then is fights among us, yeah, because there's less and less money. And so the NGOs start competing with each other instead of cooperating with each other. And we are being naive in the sense that we continue to fight then amongst each other instead of addressing what is really behind this, which is a problem with our economic system, which is based on giving tax breaks to unsustainable industry. We have the 700 billion fossil fuel subsidies still out there, the billions of subsidies going to large industrialized pesticide incentive agriculture and the nuclear industry. And I think we really have to make this a topic. Civil society space and funding has been reduced on purpose, and we know why it is happening, and we should really make it also a topic in all the work we do at the United Nations, because through the United Nations we can at least try and get awareness for this, to increase the spaces for civil society. And we might need to do more, but at least what we should be doing is to put our fingers on the sore spots. And we need to use information like we got from the Paradise Papers this week, that also in many of the European governments, people are sitting at high-level posts, sending their money away to tax paradises, and taking it away from the needed funds for environmental protection and civil society capacity building. So let's keep that very clear, and let's also put it in our regional statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Yeah. we go.
I support completely. This is going to the deep roots, and this is probably the best explanation for the global causes. But there is something for Europe that I would like to address and explain a little bit, because REC was trying to do its best in the region, but of course we have to be creative. We have not to consider that the funds are the only issue, but the funds play an important role. What happens, in fact, is building of Europe, when it was built, it was initially a peace process, a long-term peace process. It was beyond economics. And then it became only an economic process. So that's also connected to that. And to a certain extent, when new countries came part of the EU, what they receive is a new acquis, a new big bunch of legislation. You have to implement this, and then funds. Forgetting maybe that those countries, whether it's my country, Spain, who came from Franco times, or Greece, which came also from a dictatorship, or Central Eastern Europe, which came from communist time, they were not completely ready. As I said, it's not because you send money and you provide legislation that whatever country, whether it's Spain, Romania, or even Hungary, becomes Finland. It's not becoming Finland in 2 seconds with a proper governance, with a participatory system, no. And this was completely forgotten in the EU process. And what happens, in addition to that, is that other players, in the case of REC, America, Japan, they say, oh, you are part of the EU, now you are Finland. We don't give you any more money to support civil society. You can still work in the Balkans, because the Balkans are not the EU, so then you can have a room, but it's getting smaller and smaller, or go to the ICA region, but here everything is solved. We are now perfectly finished. And it's not true. And this is a process that was, in fact, not properly done. And part of the crisis now in Europe is the fact that the governance issue, that the good governance, that the social dimension of Europe was not brought. So I'm deeply European, but it was done halfway. So I think this explains also the fact that civil society, that's just for the diagnosis, just to give a good opportunities, because it's, as Sveti said, we have to be positive. There was a very good example that we launched with the support of the WWF in the Mediterranean region. This was called Across the Waters. This program was a very small initiative that was growing year after year, and was based on 4 components to support civil society in the South Mediterranean. And it was small grant programs, big grant programs, training of the NGOs, but in addition to that, twinings between North and South. So the NGOs that had experience, and this is something that it's radically missing still in Europe. We still have poor civil society in some areas of Europe, and it would be very good that EIB, which is very strong, but in Brussels, towards Brussels, somehow supports a mechanism that share knowledge and capacity building of NGOs from Eastern Europe, South Europe, to Central and Northern Europe, because we have a landscape of NGOs that is dramatically different. We don't have NGOs with 1 million people, participants, like you have from the Netherlands to the north to England. In the rest, it's small NGOs, and there is a big lack of support on that. And I agree, of course, the battle is very big.
Thank you. Tamara?
First of all, I'm Tamara Malkova from Ukraine, Information Center Green Dossier. I didn't introduce myself, sorry. Our organization was very active for many years in UNEP process, but last 3 or 4 years we are not so active, just try to follow all information and all changes. And now I have a view like from stepping out of the process. I would like to stress that there is a lot of not a lot of, but there are very important changes made in, happened in our region and during these last years. And the situation in our countries was changed, sometimes very, very dramatically. Now our country, Ukraine, participate in Eastern Partnership, and we have association agreement with EU. And I was delegate of Civil Society Forum of Eastern Partnership just last month. I see that environmental component in Eastern Partnership is very, very weak. And maybe there are a lot of interesting organizations from all Eastern Partnership countries. Our Ukrainian delegation is very strong, but environmental part of all this process at our national level and international Eastern Partnership level is very, very weak. I think it is a great possibility to use this strong new movement to come with UNEP issues, with our organizations, to make more influence to this process. There are 5 working groups on all levels of Eastern Partnerships, and other working groups like there are politicians, media people, business people, agriculture people in those groups. They don't know about environmental components of the activities. They know nothing. It is a great field for our work. Just go to these people, to these groups, and integrate our views, our issues into their activities. And Eastern Partnership has good finance. There are a number of grants, re-granting systems, and this money goes also to Eastern Partnership countries. It is also an opportunity to use this new situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. And we had one more comment from this side.
Yes, thank you. I would like to give you a few examples from a very specific area, a few examples on NGO participation in chemicals and waste processes in UN environment. And I'm following these processes for many years. And what we experience is that the way that the possibilities to engage in these processes, also during a conference of parties, for instance, is difficult from COP to COP. It gets more and more difficult. This includes, for instance, that at the last COP of the Rotterdam Convention, we were for the first time not allowed to be present in working groups. That never happened before. Then we have incidents in another way that, for instance, I mean, I can say that I was personally threatened by an industry representative at the COP saying, if you do not shut up, wait until you go home tonight. I reported this, and at the next COP, the same association was granted for the first time a side event and a huge booth. And this should not be the way we work together. Then in the chemicals cluster, NGOs lost funding opportunities due to the fact that the Quick Start program was ended and a special program was started, which does not include the possibility for NGOs to apply for projects, for instance. So we see a huge pushback, which does not only include industry, it also includes UNEP on NGOs, keeping us out of funding processes, keeping us out of negotiations, not protecting us from harassments. At the last COP of the Stockholm Convention, a colleague from our delegation was sexually harassed, and she was from an indigenous group. So not only a woman, but also indigenous. And nothing happened. It was reported and nothing happened. So we see this pushback on a lot of different levels. And it's getting worse from year to year. And I think this has to stop, really. And it's not only about giving funds. I mean, that is bad enough, giving funds, taking funds away from NGOs and giving it to industry. It's also granting us the same level of participating rights that we had before, and taking our work seriously, and not and stepping in when we are harassed because of our work. That should not happen, and this is just what I experienced. If you talk to colleagues, you will hear a lot of those stories. So I see a huge pushback, and this really has to change.
Okay, thank you everyone who got involved in this discussion. It means that it's important discussion we have to have. We have to reflect this in our statement, but not only. And I think also working in the groups, when you address air, land, whatever, think about the message also to the governments and businesses and others on engagement, and especially reflecting to the principles Wondi was saying, the sharing, engaging, and partnership. That's something which we are asking for. So we have to link it to the UNEP work. But I think it's also a good sign showing that we are actually influencing the processes. That if we would have no influence on what's going on, nobody would approach us, and yeah, that wouldn't happen then. Wondi, do you still want to on the same? Okay.
The conversation. The first one on resources, also what Alex alluded to. For sure, it's not a shortage of money. There is so much money around. The biggest problem is about where is this money invested? So that is one question we need to ask. How do we make sure that our ministers are actually investing in the work of civil society? That is one. The second one, just to add on national engagement, just on Tuesday, UN Environment actually organized a workshop for journalists in Kiev on green economy, how journalists can actually become voices within the country. And I think this is the kind of engagement we should encourage, so that environment sustainability is actually reported in the media than disasters, conflicts, and scandals. So I think we need to empower also journalists with the right insight, the right information, so that they can spread the sustainability work. I am very disturbed to hear that, and I can only tell you, I think you should not limit this conversation here. We have in the UN system, specifically when it comes to environment, we have 3 special rapporteurs. One on special rapporteur on environment, Mr. John Knox. We have a special rapporteur on toxic chemicals or substances. And then the third one is that there's a special rapporteur on human rights defenders. You should definitely pass this message at least to the last one, the special rapporteur on human rights defenders. That includes also people who work on environment issues. So I can only say I'm sorry this happened, but you should take it to the, don't just keep it in the room. I think this should not be allowed at all.
Okay. I think we have to go back to the program. And as I said, we should continue this discussion also in a working groups, because it's important. But now, yeah, now I want to give floor to Alexander.
Yeah, thank you. So it's me again, and just one thing, Alexandra, please let me know. I promise you I will take action on that, bring that to the attention of our director and even Farah, because it is unacceptable. Maybe I should also say that, of course, not in this, for this issue, no, but of course the MEAs, they have different schemes for civil society engagement than UNEP headquarters. Actually, each MEA has its own, and I know that also from talking to colleagues, I can confirm that in some, not in all of the MEAs, we observe shrinking civil society spaces. We observe also that the engagement with business, or the stronger engagement of business, results in less engagement of civil society. But again, I don't think has been the idea. Okay, but coming back to to the agenda, and I try to be quick because you will have the presentation, so you can read. Also, I will not read everything what is there, also to save some time. And we talked a little bit, so I will talk a little bit about pollution. Try not to repeat what we have said already, but how we go in the UNEA context about that, what is happening at UNEA. Also, what are some opportunities for you to not only contribute by coming to UNEP and writing to us, but what you could maybe do in this context. So. Again, the assembly is in December in Nairobi. It aspires to be the highest level decision making on the environment and brings together partners from government, civil society, NGOs, and it's only the third of its kind. So it's still really a new organization, a new institution which try to find also its way and its impact. There are plenty of opportunities to engage. Besides, as I said, coming to Nairobi, working on contribution, we also have, and it's a kind of experiment, I would say. We also have set up a system of allowing you, but also governments and business, to do commitments on pollution. So if you go to our website, you can register a commitment. I should say it doesn't work so well for governments, civil society organizations, and businesses. We have lots of, I think, millions of individual commitments now. Governments and others are a little bit reluctant. It's only 3 weeks left until UNEA. So, but if anybody of you is interested to put up their commitment, do that. I mean, we know, of course, also that asking organizations to make commitments is fashionable, and maybe it has been used a little bit too often, and UNEP is maybe late on that train to really get the enthusiasm on this, what we have hoped for. So the UNEA itself is not only the 3 days where decision makers come together, so the official event, but there are events also around the UNEA. It starts already on November 27. There is a global major group and stakeholder forum. It is self-organized by civil society this year through the regional civil society engagement mechanism from Asia Pacific. So Asia Pacific coalition of NGOs took the lead in organizing the forum. On the forum in the 2 days, it really gives the opportunity for your representatives to discuss your views towards UNEA, to condense it also into statements, to coordinate, and also to exchange experience. This year is also directly after the forum, there is a third open-ended meeting of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, if you want, so the PrepCom for the UNEA. Usually these meetings take place a few months before this time, because the last UNEA was only 1 year ago, and to save resources, it's basically back-to-back. That is when governments, do the final, hopefully get to final agreements on text of resolutions, decisions, etc. It's fully open for civil society participation, so it's also the chance for you to help shaping, influencing decisions. On the weekend, which follows that, still before UNEA, we have what we call, actually, there's a small mistake. In the meantime, that's called Science Policy Business Forum. So it's more or less like a conference type of event which takes place on the weekend of UNEA, also open for participation by civil society, where there will be a discussion basically how science, but also now business can help addressing the pollution problem and improving decisions taken. Last but not least, parallel to the UNEA, December 4 to 6, will be the Sustainable Innovation Expo, an opportunity for business, but not also for universities. We have some to present their innovative solutions to addressing pollution. So you have their producers of electro cars, let's say, or people who work on substitutes for plastic bags, whatever. So some events around the UNEA, you know that from other conferences like that. This time we only have a few side events. We only allowed for 6 official side events. Before it was much more. We also don't have what we used to call green room. That's one room where NGOs can all the time do side events. The reason for that is really that UNEA is very short, and we felt many felt that side events, as interesting as they are, they attract actually from the main, they distract from the main meeting. There will be, in parallel to the UNEA, an NGO tent. So that's a special space, self-organized by NGOs, where if you're there, you can also do things like side events, use it for your meetings, coordination meetings, etc. So much about UNEA. You find all that information on the website. A little bit about pollution, and a lot has been said already to that. So I think we all are in agreement that pollution is, and its various aspects has reached maybe a price we pay for development, for consumerism, for the lifestyle we are living, has a very visible impact on human health, on lifespan of people, on the state of our ecosystems, on the marine environment. That pollution and its effects creates unbelievable costs for the society. We talked a little bit about there's money around. It just doesn't go to civil society. And even if you would address the pollution problem, how much more funds which could be used for something positive would theoretically be around. As I said, the idea is, of course, of the UNEA. We will not be able to go into details of all of that. There's also a report on the theme of the executive director, which you can download, which discuss it in more details. I think more the idea is to make decision makers understand that that's something we need to address. Pollution is also something which affects everybody. Some are more affected than others. We know that poor people are much more suffering under the effect of the effects of pollution than wealthier people. There's also geographically difference, but still nobody can, in one way or the other, escape from the effects of pollution. And I think what we really want that pollution is understood as being something almost, if you want, so perverse, something what shouldn't happen is us willingly, destroying our health, the health of our children for the sake of progress, development, consumerism, etc. One way to look at pollution is, of course, to look at the gaps. We know there are, I think also Kenty a little bit referred to that. So we will not necessarily look only at the different subsectors, and as we know, there's huge implementation gaps. Uni said it's a kind of old-fashioned approach, also because we talk since 40 years, longer, since ever maybe, about pollution. Also pollution was a problem in London in the 19th century. Lots have been done. There are MEAs, there are laws dealing with pollution. Some of them with some of them we are not able to catch up with the developments. There are good laws, no, but you know, the development's happening so fast, the energy demand, let's say, which is met by coal-powered fire plants, that is not sufficient. In other areas, for many MEAs, there's lots of good intention, goodwill, but very little implementation is happening. So we don't get further than the state of producing declarations, resolutions, nice papers, if you want so. The impact on the positive on the impact of the physical environment often is missing, and unfortunately very often we do yet another MEA or yet another resolution to address the problem instead of focusing really on the implementation. What can we do really to have a physical effect? Knowledge has been mentioned many times. I think we all agree to that you know, knowledge is a lack of knowledge, of course, is a problem in addressing pollution. Sometimes it's an infrastructure problem, for instance, a lack of a monitoring infrastructure. It's a question of leaderships. If you go to maybe most of your countries, you will find leadership which put development, maybe social issues also, but certainly development first. They want an increase in the GDP. Also many people, of course, want to have higher salaries, and and that you have also in developed countries. For that, they will be ready to give up on the environmental side if you want so. So we need a leadership which really puts environment, you know, first, or at least at the same level. Again, nothing new, and that is a little bit maybe a sad story, because that's about it's taking leadership in a development which is sustainable. Then there are other issues, of course, which relate to sustainable consumption and production. That the prices you pay for products, they are not, you know, they're not including the external costs, the costs on the environment that is paid by the society, or often neglected. There's also many consumers who don't understand that their choices have environmental impact. So this is one approach. Pollution is, of course, related also to the Agenda 2030. I don't go into details there. I think you must find in all sustainable development goals, you find aspects which in one way or the other relate to pollution. So addressing the pollution problem also means progress in implementing the Agenda 2030. UNEA should result into a kind of framework for action, and of course, you know, we are all not naive. We know that is UN slang. You have so many frameworks for actions and calls for action. What maybe is new in that at least a new thinking is to maybe engage more citizens, at least that we try to do that. It's very hard, actually, to engage more citizens in solving the problem, saying it is not enough just, you know, that good decisions are taken by intergovernmental bodies, but we need really the whole society being behind in addressing the pollution problem, because at the end it's very much, it boils down to individual choices, not only, but it is a very important factor. Whether the framework for action or the approach will look like this, or whether it will look different, that's to be seen. So this conclusion I took, and of course I in principle agree to that. That is I took, of course, out of UNEA documents. It starts with that pollution-free planet is within reach. Because some of you might disagree to that. We at UNEP find it important. Wondi has also talked around to give the discussion a positive switch. And I would say even though we as experts on the field, we know that there's lots of work to done. If you look maybe back in history, there have been many areas where we have thought, that will never work. If you see the progress which society had, with all the downsides, pollution being one of them, but in terms of extending of the lifespan of not all, but many people, how little time you work these days to earn your living compared to maybe 100 years ago. All areas which at that time nobody thought it would be able, the society would be able to achieve that. I think if there's a will, even with even a pollution-free planet could be achieved. Whether it's within reach like that, let's see. But it's not too late. I think that's really the message. Here are a few resources. Again, I hope you will get that. So you find also access to resolutions, etc. The Clean Planet Pledge. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. I think we better go straight to the Wendy's presentation and then open for questions. You can also use mine. You want to walk around? No? No? You walked on before.
Half the things I wanted to say, Alex has already said. So
good.
So I may save you a bit of time then. See which one. Yes. So I guess I'm going to, since I've talked way too much this morning, I'll be very brief in terms of this is really to guide you through the resolution, the pledges. Alex has already mentioned it. I don't have to repeat this part. It's but in the morning I mentioned about the background. It's not because pollution is a romantic topic. There is a reason why we actually, or member states actually picked up on this particular theme. Is one, I said this is part and parcel of our agenda in terms of delivering the 2030 agenda, in particular when it comes to the environmental dimensions. So UNEA's role, you've heard the UN Environment Assembly, its role is basically giving us policy advice, but also they are taking the key messages from UNEA to the high-level political forum where this reporting is done on an annual basis. Now, in terms of delivering the new agenda, these are the key areas where member states actually advised us, guided us, and instructed us how we should engage in terms of implementing the agenda. One is really partnership with the UN system, which we do a lot. We also have something called the regional coordination mechanism in this region where it brings many of the UN agencies together to speak in one voice, but also to deliver as one UN body. And the third one is in many of the countries, in particular in the ECA countries, we have something called the UN Development Assistance Framework. Now it has been given a new name, the UN Partnership Assistance. Some countries, they don't want to call it development assistance, but partnership framework. This is where really how we can mainstream environment sustainability into national policy planning, budgeting. So that's one area we are quite active. And then the other element is really how do we actually build capacity in terms of institutions, but also human capacity to drive this new development agenda. Other elements include, we've been told we should actually work on multi-stakeholder partnership. I think we are already doing that. Next step is to further strengthen it. What else do? We are quite active in terms of the follow-up and review process, especially using relevant policy information coming out of the Global Environment Outlook, promoting the science policy interface, Environment Live, something it used to be called UNEP Live. I think we should use it a lot. Environment Live has a very interesting information on how you could actually link the different SDGs in the context of environment dimensions. And also, as I said, the link to the program of work and the midterm strategy. Just a flashback on so that we don't forget UNEA 2. We really discussed about healthy environment, healthy people at UNEA 2 last time. So we are building on that, not reinventing the wheel, but this is something we need to strengthen and something we should continue to do. It should be consistent rather than you start on something in this cycle and then in the next one you start something completely different. I think this makes a lot of sense in terms of showcasing. We looked at poor environmental quality and what it means in terms of human health and the environment. So that is the background. That's why I wanted to mention that. But also what triggered all this discussion in the context of whether it is the previous UNEA or the current one on towards a pollution-free planet is some of the figures we before us in the Americas. Environmental health factors or environmental risk factors are actually killing 850 million people. If you go to Eastern Mediterranean, the figure is 870 million people, 870,000 people. That's almost a million. The same in the Americas, 850,000 people. It's almost, if you round it up with the statisticians, it is close to 1 million people are dying in one region. In Europe alone, we've seen through the Environment and Health ministerial process, 1.4 million people are dying in this region from environmental risk factors. And air pollution accounts for almost half a million people. 500 to 600,000 people die from air pollution-related sickness, disease. In Africa, 2.2 million. Western Pacific, 3.5 million. So not giving you a breaking news of bad news, but when you have figures like this, shouldn't we be talking about the impact of pollution? Shouldn't that be a key priority? Because we are losing people every single day, and we need to focus on that. So that is the context in which, how can we contribute to this? How do we make our environment better for ourselves and for future generations? So that's the context. So I will not touch this one because, Alex, it's funny, we're having a similar presentations. But here are some of the interesting parts for those of you who haven't visited the website, because in the last a week, actually, we have completely revamped the website. It looks very attractive, but there is information for participants you should definitely have a look at. It gives you detailed explanation of what is going to happen. So I have put the website down there. In terms of registration, you cannot participate without registering. So it's been open since the 7th of July, and it goes on till the 4th of December. So this is the place where we have now an online registration system that we have. You should look at it. We also have an interesting notification by the executive director really detailing what this assembly is all about. So you definitely need to have this information in your pack so that everybody has exactly the right information. And it's, the link is at the bottom of the document. The provisional agenda, if you have not seen it, it looks like this. Try to familiarize yourself for those of you who are actually going to Nairobi. Even if you are not going to Nairobi, still it's useful to know what is going to happen. The annotated agenda is also posted. It is available. You should definitely have a look at that. And then the resolution platform. I think this is exciting. So I think is this the first time we're having, we actually created a resolution platform showcase what is being discussed, or what are the background documents. We call them, I think, pre-session documents. It includes reports on progress reports on what we have done with the UNEA 2 resolutions. I think we had about 25 resolutions and 2 decisions. So that is in detail to look at what has been done so far in the context of implementing the previous resolution. So that is in the pre-session document. The same story here. This is the pre-session. Then the in-session documents are also available to you. But the trick is you also need to register in terms of accessing the different resolutions that will be discussed by member states. So I think if you have not created an account, I would recommend that you actually create a user account, which is the link is down there. You can actually use this to register and access what is being and these are this is the resolution submitted by government, so you can see who is submitting what. At the moment, we have a small glitch because some of the resolutions are almost similar, so we need to align them. So this is like a live document or a rolling kind of work program. So I think once you register, have an account, you will have access to what are the resolutions being proposed. And the key message being, don't propose a resolution for the sake of a resolution. It should be linked to the thematic issues that will be discussed at the Assembly. That makes a lot of sense in terms of follow-up, also in terms of investing resources. So that again is about, the resolution tracker, it's called, so you can track what resolution is being there. And then the key outcome is we will have a so-called ministerial outcome. It's a 2-page document at the moment as it stands now. The President released this one on the 3rd of November. I think this could be part of the conversation in the working groups. I don't want to dwell on this one. This is what member states have come up at the moment. I'm sure you have comments, suggestions, or messages that you would like to send in the context of the draft ministerial declaration that will be hopefully adapted as a UNEA outcome. Alexander has talked about this. We have the Sustainable Innovation Expo. This is really to show solutions, although it's focused on business, but also there are solutions from civil society also in public participation, in advocacy. There are so many good solutions that can be applied. Unfortunately, the deadline has closed, as you can see on the screen. Deadline was on the 30th of October. But in terms of exhibition also, the deadline will be on the 25th of November. So if they are joint up thinking, maybe civil society want to showcase good examples, why not take advantage of the exhibition? And that is where you can actually find the link to where you can apply for that space. I will not say much about the report. This is, it's a very good report, and I'm happy to contribute to it. So, first one, I tell people, please read the report, because it is really full of information and knowledge. So there are 2 versions of the report. There is the full report, which talks about in details what are the actions that needs to be taken. And then there's another one, a 29-page document. It's like an executive summary, or call it a policy summary. So the 2 of them you should. And the second thing you need to do is please sign up the pledge. Do you want to beat pollution? I put something over there. That's the hashtag we've been using for a while. How do you engage in this global community movement that wants to beat pollution. So please sign up the pledge. As of today, I quickly checked, we have 1,291,000 people or institutions have actually signed the pledge to beat pollution, and we need more. We are almost 7-point-something billion people, so I think we need, so it is, from we should turn it into we need to beat pollution. In addition to that, we have very exciting campaigns that are going on with the UN Environment at the moment. One is the Clean Seas campaign. I think you should definitely also submit your commitments and pledges in the context of the oceans agenda, but not necessarily not everybody is around an ocean. The lakes and the seas that are in our countries can also be protected through this kind of campaign. Breathe Life is another campaign with the World Health Organization that we are promoting, and I think that is also something you should definitely be engaged. Otherwise, that is all I have. Maybe the only thing I can add, but when you read the report, you will get some of the hard-hitting evidence in terms of pollution. Is we know which economic sectors are contributing to this. You know, the agriculture, food, energy, industry, manufacturing, the services industry, transport, and waste. These are key economic sectors in our day-to-day lives. But at the same time, the dilemma is that these are actually the ones who are also contributing to the pollution that we are talking about. Part of the problem in terms of the cost is we don't acknowledge the cost, or rather it is not accounted for. So we need to talk a lot about the economic cost of pollution, and that is part of the report. It is talking about the cause, the impact, the consequences, but in particular, what is the economic cost? Then I will finish by making two additional comments. First one, in 2013 alone, just to talk about air pollution globally, the economic cost was about $5.1 trillion. 5.1. And if you break it down into outdoor, indoor, outdoor pollution accounted for $3 trillion. And that's a huge cost. And then one of the things we are saying is, imagine by 2060, outdoor air pollution could account for $25 trillion. It's very, very serious. And then one thing I missed from Alex's presentation in the gaps is one of the things we are actually missing today is leadership by financial institutions and industry. They are not taking the leadership in terms of beating pollution. And they need to account for that. So one gap is, yes, we have a knowledge gap, but more than anything, there is a leadership gap. And that leadership gap includes the industry and the financial institutions who are not investing in this. I think I stop there.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are a little bit over time, but I think we have planned a lot of time for lunch, so we should take some questions or comments if you have. Or everybody's hungry. Sasha.
Well, I think it's maybe very good if all the working groups also later on this afternoon really have a quick look at the summary report, because a lot of the background information is there, but then say what is specific for our region. For example, that 50% of plastics from Europe waste is sent to developing countries, mostly to China, and a lot of it ends up in the ocean, so we have a direct ocean impact with our waste. That type of thing from the region would be really great. The other thing is maybe we should look a little bit more at the themes of the resolutions. and how our regional input can maybe still be brought into the resolutions. And maybe also at the ministerial declaration. So maybe you can just give us a sense. The ministerial declaration, this is the final draft, but it will still be negotiated. Okay.
The one I showed is the latest draft as of 3rd of November, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it's still work in progress.
Maybe if you allow me, also we received a lot of input actually on this resolution already from civil society, and of course I'm sure not everything is in there, but I know that a lot was also taken on board. Now, the same goes actually for the pollution report, so we had almost an overwhelming influx of comments, suggestions for the pollution report, and also lots, I think, not all, but lots is reflected there already.
Thank you. I just would like to make a comment, and thank you very much for all of the introductions and presentations by everyone. I just would like to add to the importance of involving citizens and citizens groups and all stakeholders. Would like just to add that we would also need to think of those who take legal actions against pollution or for the prevention of pollution. So this aspect would be good to reflect. Maybe it comes up in the working groups. And in this sense, of course, we have some conventions in Europe, the Aarhus Convention, but also we have now in Latin America the shaping or for being formulated the Agreement on Principle 10, which would be for the whole Latin American and Caribbean region. And it would be really good to strengthen from the side of UNEA these type of processes to have strong rights for citizens in terms of access to information, public participation, and access to justice to fight so-called fight pollution, stop or prevent pollution. So the rights that would be included in this regional agreements, and also we could refer to the Bali guidelines, although these are just recommendations. This would also help to citizens and citizens groups, and there could be tools like really, for example, the so-called injunctive relief, when the court actually could take action and stop the polluting activity, either provisionally or permanently. And of course, there are also other ways to do this. And the protection of the environmental defenders could be also mentioned. So just to add some aspects which we could also refer to, and this could be also thoughts to be used in the UNEA. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are already shaping our inputs. Very good. Yoni, Sasha, do you want to say one? No? And then.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if this comment is needed, but since this is a preparatory meeting for the UNEA, so just a couple of practical things for those who are planning to go to UNEA but have not been there before. So the whole United Nations documentation system is a bit confusing at first. So I ask you to do your homework so that you go through the meeting papers in advance, because the more time you spend looking at them beforehand, the more at ease you are in the meeting itself, and you know which paper is discussed and when. Another issue is that if you are a person who really needs to read longer texts on paper, then you should try to take your own prints with you. Prints are practically not available in UNEP. A third thing, which is kind of my own observation, is that the UN web system is a bit confusing in the sense that I think that every time I do something new, every time I try to look for some new information, I'm always asked to create a new username and password for some part of the page. So I have lists of usernames and passwords for UN pages, and they never work if I try the old ones. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. First there, and then Sasha, and then you.
Sasha, you want before me? No. Gender equity. What about a duo or a duet? Okay, good. I have 2 comments. First of all, Wanda was kindly distributing the sheets. You are very happy that I am indicating, yes? One thing that there will be, for example, a declaration, a 2-page now. Another story of how it's complicated, the system over there. I was there. It's very important that whatever there will be, it's very important that it reaches also the regions. Not simply global, overall messages and so on. I'm not sure that whether the CNN or the Reuters will be interested in that because it's not catastrophic. So it would be very important to distribute it and also regionalize. So any of these pictures, waste generation, water pollution, in the regions and sub-regions, it's simply some pictures like this one. It would really make very important. So it's not simply here in this room, but if you also send not simply the 2 pages and the press release through the world, but also indicating how it's a problem in sub-Saharan Africa, in Central Europe, or in Central Asia, and so on, it will be much more important because then obviously either the TVs or so this is my first comment. So I know I was dealing all these issues several decades, and after that it's the 3 days over and nobody remembers anything. My second point also related to that one. Yesterday, some of us also attended that Laszlo Pinter added 1 P to the 5 Ps. Planet, you know it, people, blah, 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 pollution. Okay. He added the proof. So you reminded us also the previous assembly session. So think very carefully whether everything that we agreed upon, whether it's a Rotterdam Convention, we just mentioned, or the Stockholm Convention, or the Basel Convention, and many other things. I know very many of this, okay, how actually they act. Whether these are paper tigers. So this would be a very important one, whatever meeting you attend, including whether it's in Geneva, in Budapest, and so on. I miss typically this looking back and also learning whether it was useful or not. So this 6P is typically forgotten, especially because new people are coming. Some of these dinosaurs, like Alex or myself, remember how it happened, what we promised, okay? But for the new generations, new people also should. So the 6P somehow should be there if one really prepare for Nairobi. Nobody will be interested later on if you also not add, even in the 2-page, whether we were successful, what we promised in 1972, whether it's Rio +20, and so on. And you just, and like others also in this room mentioned, that despite the fact it was really highlighted in the Rio +20 and you reiterated civil society should be involved also in the UNEP business and so on, you heard a lot now today that it's not happening, especially in this region and maybe in others. So first, illustrations should be added, not only for the press release, and also the proof whether what we promised earlier, and in that light also see whether it will be also good what we now resolve this time. I thank you.
Sasha.
Yeah, I think one of the issues we have to remember is that many people will not be going to UNEA 3 in this room but normally we have always tried to find ways how to engage with the delegations of the governments who are going to go beforehand. So organize maybe meetings, send our recommendations beforehand and also afterwards, and maybe it can be linked to other already ongoing project activities or so, so that some of the travel costs could be paid for those of you who are not based in the capital cities. But I do think we should also plan for that in the coming 2 days. What do we do with those who are not going, and how do we make sure we're still having as much impact as possible on the outcome of the UNEA, and then also how that what is possible from the or that what is positive from UNEA, how can we use it at home? And so if we would, I mean, in the first ministerial draft, there were 2 points which now have gone out. One was get a global ban on one-way plastic bags. That's great, that we could bring back to all our cities and all our governments. It's no longer in there, but I'm sure there will be some resolutions on that coming out of UNEA. So these type of things, we should already think strategically. You know, what do we want to do with it, and how can we use it once it comes out of the meeting? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciated the part on cost, and I think it's a really useful argument for government. So having reports, again, like the cost of inaction, for example, that's extremely useful. We really appreciated that. And one quick practical thing about the resolution platform, there's a very useful tool at the end of each page. You can click subscribe and you receive emails when something is changing. So because some of the resolutions are being, are changing according to the comments received at CPR meeting, to keep tracking of what's happening, you can do that and you receive an email.
Okay.
And it's just right there.
Okay, thank you for all the. Olga, you, yeah, okay.
Okay, I would also thank for very good presentations. Thank you very much. And just to add some comments. First of all, I agree with Sasha that it would be very important to keep involved people who is not going to UNEA 3. And we are thinking about it. For example, we plan to produce daily news from UNEA in Russian and disseminate it within our quite big network. Also, of course, altogether, who will go to UNEA, who will not go, we need to think what to do after UNEA and how to participate in implementation. And I think that we will have discussion on that. And also to support Sasha on links in discussions with national governments. It would be really very important. And we also face problems that in many cases we don't know who is going. And my question is to Alexander, is it possible to get access on registered delegations? And disseminate this information? It would be very important for national NGOs to start discussions, to contacts with their governments and to give them our recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, so Wendy or Alexander, you want to respond on?
I picked up a few, so I just randomly, maybe one useful information, the next president of UNEA will come from Eastern Europe. So it is very important to think about how do we support him, her? How do we work with this president? Because the person will be presiding over, so I think we need to have that kind of strategy. And I'm with you, Olga, what you said, the follow-up is more important. So what do you pledge after UNEA? Will you be going back home and ensure that you organize a briefing session, how you could nationalize the outcome of UNEA? That is one aspect you can look at. In the context of the legal angle, I think if you followed the work UN Environment has been doing recently, there's a lot of reference to the human rights-based approach. In the past, we all talk about, the Convention on the Right of the Child, Article 24, talks about the right to safer environment. But I think that there is more and more push in terms of integrating human rights approach. And in particular, we should effectively use the special rapporteurs. We have 3 special rapporteurs within the UN system on environment, on toxic substance, and human rights defenders. I think maybe this is something you should also mention if you want. I'm just suggesting in your outcome document is how do we also work with them, because they also carry a heavy weight in terms of taking this message beyond the environment community. Thank you for highlighting the infographics. So I will do a small publicity now. Those infographics, I'm sorry, they are just in F3 form, but we have the bigger one, which is also available on,